The snow was falling thick and heavy across the empty park, the air sharp and biting with winter's breath. A lonely man dressed in an expensive suit walked quietly through the path, his mind wrapped in silence. He was a millionaire, a man who had everything the world could offer, yet his heart carried only emptiness. Wealth could not warm the cold chambers of his soul, and success had given him no family to share it with. For years he had been surrounded by people who wanted his fortune, but none who cared for the man he truly was. As his polished shoes pressed against the icy ground, he noticed a shape on a bench ahead. It was unusual to see anyone out here in such brutal cold. His pace quickened. His heart struck with a strange pull that made him forget the chill. When he came closer, he froze. A small girl no older than 7 sat trembling, wrapped in a worn blue coat. Her hair stuck to her wet face as tears ran down her cheeks. In her shaking arms, she cradled a tiny baby bundled in a thin pink cloth. The sight pierced him deeper than anything he had ever known. The man stepped closer, his voice breaking with shock. "It is so cold. Why are you here alone?" The little girl looked up at him, her lips trembling, her eyes swollen and red. She clutched the baby tighter as though the world itself was trying to take it away. "Please help." She sobbed, her voice so fragile it shook him. "She hurts us every night," she whispered brokenly, as if the words themselves would shatter her. He knelt beside her, forgetting who he was, forgetting that he had an empire waiting. He only saw 2 children abandoned in a world far too cruel for them. His hand hovered uncertain near her shoulder. He could see bruises along her wrist, faint but real. He wanted to ask more but feared the answer. His voice softened. "Tell me what happened, child." The girl shook her head as if afraid to speak louder. She looked around as though shadows were watching. Her body pressed protectively against the baby. "She hurts us. Please don't let her find us again." The man felt a rage and sorrow rise together inside him. His life of lonely boardrooms and empty mansions seemed meaningless compared to this desperate cry. He removed his coat and wrapped it around the shivering girl and the baby. He could not imagine how long they had sat out here. The baby whimpered weakly, the sound fragile as glass pressed against his heart. The man thought of his own childhood, the silence of a house where his parents never cared for him. They too had left him alone, though not in the snow but in the cold emptiness of neglect. That old ache burned again now as he looked at the little ones before him. "You are safe now," he said firmly, though his voice wavered. "I will not let anyone hurt you again." The girl stared at him, her tears slowing as if she could not believe his promise. He did not know her name. He did not know her story, but in that moment, he knew his life was no longer his own. He had found something more precious than all the wealth he had gathered, and he could never walk away. The wind howled through the empty park as the man gathered the girl and her baby sister closer. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, heavier than any fortune he had ever carried in his life. His expensive watch gleamed in the pale light, but he no longer thought of time or meetings or contracts. The only thing that mattered was keeping these fragile children safe. He lifted the girl gently, helping her rise from the snow-covered bench. The baby whimpered softly in her arms, and he tightened his coat around both of them. He looked at the girl, who could barely keep her balance from exhaustion. "Where is your home, child?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, refusing to speak, her eyes darting in fear as though every tree in the park might hide the one who had hurt her. "I cannot take you back there," he murmured to himself. "If home is pain, then it is no home at all." He looked at the street beyond the park where his sleek black car was parked. The driver sat inside, unaware of the miracle unfolding just a few yards away. The man lifted the girl and the baby into his arms with a strength born not of muscle but of love he had buried for years. "Come with me," he said softly. "I will take care of you." The warmth of the car was a shock after the cruel cold outside. The driver glanced back, his eyes widening when he saw the children, but the man silenced him with a look. "Drive," he ordered, his voice firm. "We are going home." The girl clutched her baby sister tighter. Her eyes, filled with both fear and hope, she whispered, "Please don't let her find us." The man reached out and covered her small hand with his. "I promise." The city lights blurred past the windows as the car moved swiftly through the streets. Inside, the girl's sobs softened into weary silence. She leaned her head against the seat, her lashes heavy with exhaustion. The baby stirred and whimpered, but the warmth slowly calmed her. The man sat across from them, his heart aching. He had never known such protectiveness. Before he thought of the countless nights he had eaten alone in his grand dining room, the silence pressing down. Now for the first time he felt the silence break. When they arrived at his mansion, the girl gasped. Her eyes widened at the towering gates, the grand stone walls lit with warm golden lights. But instead of awe, her face twisted with confusion. "Why are you helping us?" she asked in a whisper. "Nobody ever helps us. They just close the door and tell us to go away." Her small voice cut him like a knife. "Because I know what it means to be alone," he answered slowly. "Because I once prayed for someone to see me, to take me away from the cold, and because no child should suffer what you have suffered." He guided them inside the mansion, the warmth of the grand hall wrapping around them like a blanket. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the luxurious furniture. None of it mattered to him anymore. It was only background to the two fragile souls who now made the space come alive. Maid rushed forward, eyes wide. "Sir, who are these children? Shall I call someone?" "No," he interrupted firmly. "Bring warm blankets, food, and milk quickly." The maid obeyed with startled silence. The girl sat on the edge of a velvet sofa, still clutching the baby as though it were her only anchor. The man knelt before her, gently brushing away the strands of wet hair from her face. "You are safe here. No one will hurt you again." The girl's lips trembled. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but closed it again, finally whispering, "She hits us with belts, she locks us in dark rooms, and she says nobody will believe us if we tell." The man's fists clenched. He felt fury, unlike anything he had known. The girl was not lying. He could see the truth carved in her trembling hands and the bruises faintly visible beneath her sleeve. He took a deep breath, calming his voice. "Tell me your name, child." She hesitated, then whispered softly, "My name is Emily, and this is my sister Lily. She is only 6 months old." The man repeated the names in his heart, Emily and Lily. He felt as though they had already written themselves into his life. The maid returned carrying blankets and food. Emily accepted them cautiously, feeding Lily first before taking a piece of bread herself. The man watched quietly, his chest tight with emotions. He had seen countless business deals signed in his mansion. But this simple act of a girl feeding her baby sister was the most sacred thing the walls had ever witnessed. When the children were finally resting under soft blankets, the man sat in his study staring at the fire. His thoughts spun in a storm. What would happen if their abuser came searching? What if the law returned them to the very hands that had scarred them? He could not allow it. He had power, wealth, influence. He would use every ounce of it to protect them. But beneath his resolve was another feeling, something he had buried for years. The longing for family, the hunger for love that no mansion or fortune had ever given him. Perhaps fate had led him to the park. Perhaps these children were not only to be saved by him, but also to save him from his loneliness. He rose quietly and walked back to the living room. Emily slept curled around Lily on the sofa, her small arm protectively cradling the baby. The sight pierced him with such tenderness that his eyes grew wet. He whispered softly, "You are not alone anymore. You will never be alone again." The night passed slowly in the mansion, and though the fires burned warm and the children were safe under blankets, the man could not close his eyes. Sleep refused him, for every time he tried. He saw Emily's frightened face and heard her broken whisper, "She hurts us every night." He rose before dawn, walking the halls of his great house with heavy steps. A storm had settled in his heart, and he knew it would not rest until he uncovered the truth and ensured the children were never returned to pain. When the first light of morning filtered through the curtains, he returned to the living room. Emily stirred awake, clutching Lily to her chest. Her eyes fluttered open in confusion as if she had dreamed the comfort she felt. But when she saw the man watching her with gentle eyes, she realized it was real. "You are safe," he reminded her softly. "You slept without fear last night, did you not?" Emily nodded slowly, though her shoulders still carried the weight of mistrust. The man wanted to know more, but he feared pushing too hard. Instead, he called for breakfast. The table was set with fruits, bread, milk, and warm porridge. Emily's eyes widened, yet she hesitated, still clutching her sister tightly. "Eat, child," he urged softly. "You must have strength if you are to protect Lily." Emily bit her lip before taking a small bite. Her eyes filled with tears as if the simple kindness was overwhelming. After breakfast, he asked carefully, "Emily, do you remember where you lived?" She froze, her tiny hands gripping the spoon so tight it almost slipped. "I cannot go back," she whispered fiercely. "If we go back, she will beat us again. She will take Lily away and lock me in the dark." The man placed a steady hand over hers. "I promised you I would not let that happen, and I keep my promises." That morning he called his most trusted lawyer, a man who had stood by him in countless business battles. "This is not business," he told him gravely. "This is life itself. 2 children came into my care last night. They are in danger, and I must protect them." The lawyer listened carefully and agreed to begin searching the legal ways to keep the children safe. Yet the man knew that whoever had hurt Emily and Lily would not give them up quietly. By afternoon, the storm began. A loud pounding echoed through the gates of the mansion. The guard announced that a woman was outside demanding her children. Emily, who was playing quietly with Lily near the fire, froze, her face drained of color. "She is here," she whispered, terror flooding her eyes. The man rose at once, fury boiling in his chest. He ordered the guards, "Do not let her enter. Without my word, nobody passes these gates." From the window he saw her, a woman with wild eyes and a face twisted in rage. She screamed at the guards, claiming to be the mother. Her voice carried across the courtyard, filled with venom and entitlement. Emily clung to his coat, sobbing. "That is her, please do not let her take us back." He knelt, holding her tight. "Look at me, child. Do you believe I will protect you?" Emily nodded, though her tears did not stop. "Then trust me," he said firmly. He stepped outside, facing the woman. She spat words of accusation. "You have my children, you thief. I will call the police." He stood tall, his voice calm but cutting. "If you were truly a mother, your children would not be half frozen on a park bench in the dead of night. You are not fit to raise them." Her eyes narrowed with hatred. "You think your money gives you the right to take them from me? You know nothing." He did not flinch. "Money means nothing here. Only their safety matters." He signaled to his guards. "Escort her away. If she returns again, she will answer to the law." The woman screamed threats as she was dragged away. But he did not waver. Returning inside, he found Emily trembling. "Did she see me?" she whispered. "Did she know I was here?" He stroked her hair gently. "She will not touch you again." Yet as night fell, unease filled the mansion. The man knew the woman would not stop. She had the desperation of someone who feared losing control. He tightened security, but his thoughts raced. If the law sided with her, if officials failed to see the truth, Emily and Lily might be forced back into her hands. He could not allow that. Or later that night, as Emily finally drifted into uneasy sleep, the man stood watching the fire crackle. He thought of his life again. All his wealth, all his power. None of it had ever given him peace. But this battle for 2 fragile lives stirred something inside him, a strength he never knew he had. Perhaps this was his true calling. Not boardrooms and contracts, but fatherhood. The silence was broken by the cry of Lily. He hurried forward, lifting the baby gently in his arms, rocking her until she calmed. Her tiny hand wrapped around his finger, her warmth sinking deep into his soul. Emily opened her eyes and whispered softly, "You are not like other grown-ups. You care." The man swallowed hard. His voice hushed. "I care because I see myself in you. I too once waited for someone to save me, and now I will not fail you." As dawn broke, the lawyer returned with documents. "If you are willing," he said, "you can apply for guardianship until a full investigation is done. But be warned, the woman will fight back, and she may twist the story to make herself look innocent." The man looked at Emily and Lily sleeping peacefully, and his resolve hardened. "Let her fight. I will give everything to protect them." The next days became a whirlwind of battles, court papers, threats from the woman, rumors spreading across the city. Yet inside the mansion a new world bloomed. Emily slowly began to smile, her laughter soft but real. She learned to trust the warmth of food, the safety of locked gates, the comfort of a man who never raised his hand in anger. Lily grew stronger, her cries turning to coos that filled the halls with life. For the first time, the mansion was no longer cold. One evening, Emily crawled onto the sofa beside him, her voice small. "Will you send us away if they tell you to?" The question pierced him deeper than any blade. He lifted her into his arms, holding her close. "Never. I will fight until my last breath to keep you safe. You are my family now." Emily looked at him with wide eyes, as though she could not believe anyone would claim her as family. She whispered softly, "Thank you," and rested her head on his chest. And as the firelight danced across the walls, the man realized that for the first time in his life, his heart was no longer empty. It was full of love, fierce and unshakable, and he knew that whatever storms came next, he would face them all because Emily and Lily were worth more than all the riches in the world. The winter days grew colder, but inside the mansion, warmth and hope began to grow. Each morning the man rose not with the empty heaviness of business, but with purpose. He no longer counted his wealth in numbers, but in the smiles of Emily and the soft breathing of Lily as she slept safely in her crib. Yet outside the walls the storm was gathering, and he knew peace would not last. The lawyer returned with news. The court had scheduled a hearing. The woman had filed claims saying the man had kidnapped her daughters. She painted herself as a victim and demanded the children be returned. The man felt his jaw tighten, his fists clenching. She dared to call them hers after what she had done. Emily overheard the whispers, and her small face turned pale. She clutched his sleeve, whispering, "Will they make us go back?" He knelt down so his eyes met hers. "Listen to me, child. I gave you my word. You will not return to pain. I will fight with everything I have." In the days before the hearing, the mansion turned into a place of preparation. Witnesses were found, neighbors who had heard screams from the woman's house, teachers who had seen Emily arrive at school, bruised and hungry. Medical reports revealed Lily had been malnourished. The truth was strong, but the man knew the court was not always just money could twist stories, power could hide sins. He had seen it in business, and he feared it here too. The night before the hearing, Emily could not sleep. She sat by the fire holding Lily, close her eyes full of fear. The man joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. "Tell me what you are afraid of," he asked gently. She hesitated before whispering, "She will tell them I am lying. She always said nobody would believe me because I'm just a child." His chest ached as he listened. He touched her hand and spoke firmly. "You are not just a child. You are brave, stronger than anyone I know, and tomorrow you will not stand alone. I will stand with you." The day of the hearing arrived. Snow fell thick upon the city as the black car carried them to the courthouse. Emily sat silently, clutching Lily and staring out the window. The man placed his hand over hers, steadying her heartbeats with his own. When they entered the court, the woman was already there. Her face twisted with false tears, her voice raised in accusation. She claimed poverty had forced her to be strict. She claimed Emily was wild and disobedient, and that she had been misunderstood. The lies dripped like poison, but the man's resolve did not waver. When it was time for testimony, Emily was called. She trembled as she walked to the stand, holding Lily's blanket in her small hands. The judge spoke gently, asking her questions. Her voice shook, but she answered, bravely. She told of the nights locked in the dark, the beatings, the cruel words. She told of how she wrapped Lily in her arms, trying to shield her from hunger and cold. The courtroom fell silent, as her small voice painted a world of pain. The woman tried to interrupt, shouting, "She is lying," but the judge silenced her. The lawyer presented evidence, photographs, medical reports, statements from neighbors. Slowly, the truth unfolded like a terrible wound revealed to the light. The judge's eyes hardened as he listened, yet still the woman fought, screaming that Emily was ungrateful, that she deserved punishment. The man could no longer remain silent. He stood, his voice steady, yet burning with fury. "No child deserves punishment like that," he declared. "These girls deserve love, safety, and a future, and I will give it to them if this court allows me." The hearing stretched long into the evening, but finally the judge spoke. His voice was firm. "The evidence is clear. These children have suffered abuse. Under your care," he said to the woman, "custody is hereby granted temporarily to Mr. Harrington until a full investigation is concluded." The woman screamed in rage as the guards restrained her, but Emily burst into tears of relief. She ran into the man's arms, whispering, "You kept your promise." He held her tight, whispering back, "Always." Though the decision was not final, it was a victory, a fragile shield that could yet be broken. But for now, it was enough. They returned to the mansion where Emily and Lily slept soundly that night for the first time in weeks, without fear of being dragged away. The man sat by the fire, staring into the flames. His heart was heavy with the knowledge that the battle was not over. The woman would fight again, and secrets still lay hidden in the shadows. The next morning, the lawyer brought new information, records that revealed the woman was not the biological mother of Emily and Lily. The truth was darker than he imagined. The children had been left in her care years ago by people who vanished without a trace. Nobody knew where the real parents had gone. The woman had taken them not out of love but out of greed, using them to collect money from the state while neglecting and abusing them. The man felt, his chest tightened with rage but also with sorrow. The children had been abandoned not once but twice. He returned to Emily, gently telling her what he had learned. Her small face grew pale, but then she whispered quietly, "I always felt she was not my real mother. She never looked at us with love. She only looked with anger." The man took her hand. "You may not know where you came from, but you know where you belong now. You belong here with me and with Lily, in a home where you are loved." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope. She leaned against him, whispering softly, "I believe you." That night, as the snow fell softly outside the mansion, the man looked at the children sleeping peacefully, and he made a silent vow. He would uncover the full truth of their past, no matter how dark. He would protect them from the woman, no matter how fierce the fight, and he would never again allow them to feel alone. For in saving them, he had found something greater than wealth, greater than power. He had found the family his heart had always longed for. The winter deepened, and though the court had given temporary custody, the man knew danger was not far behind. The woman who had abused Emily and Lily was not one to surrender easily. Her rage echoed in his memory, and he felt the weight of her threats, pressing against the safety of the mansion. Still inside those grand walls, a fragile peace grew. The children were learning to smile again, and he was learning to live, not as a lonely millionaire, but as a guardian, and perhaps even as a father. One evening, Emily sat by the fire, reading aloud from a children's book she had found in the mansion library. Lily babbled happily beside her, clutching a soft toy. Emily's voice was uncertain at first, but as she read the words, her confidence grew. The man listened quietly, his heart warmed by the sound. For years his mansion had been silent, cold, and empty. Now it rang with laughter and voices soft and innocent. He realized that this was what wealth was meant for, not marble floors or golden chandeliers, but for sheltering the fragile and giving hope to the broken. But peace was fragile as glass. One night while snow whipped against the windows, the guards reported movement near the outer walls. Someone was watching the mansion. The man felt the old fury rise. He knew it was her, the woman who had hurt Emily and Lily. He ordered the ground searched, but the intruder vanished into the storm. Emily noticed the unease in his eyes and whispered, "Is she coming back?" He pulled her close and answered firmly, "She may try, but I will never let her near you again." The lawyer arrived the next morning with grave news. The woman had filed another appeal, this time with claims that the man was unfit to raise children because he was not married and had no family of his own. She argued that the girls needed a mother's care, not the home of a lonely businessman. The man's jaw clenched. He knew her words were lies, but he also knew the court could be swayed by appearances. The lawyer added, quietly, "There is another way. If we can uncover the true identity of the girl's parents, we may secure permanent custody. The truth could be the key." So began a search deeper than any business deal he had ever pursued. Investigators combed through old records tracing the girl's history. They found that years ago, 2 young children had been abandoned at a hospital under mysterious circumstances. A woman whose name was never confirmed had left Emily still a toddler, and Lily only an infant, to be taken in by the abusive woman under the guise of care. The mystery thickened when they discovered that financial support had come from an anonymous account, deposits large enough to raise questions. Someone had been paying for their survival, in secret. The man could not rest. The thought haunted him. Who were the real parents? Why had they vanished? Why had they allowed such pain to touch their daughters? He looked at Emily one night as she slept peacefully, and he whispered softly, "I will find the truth for you, even if it shatters my world." The investigation soon revealed a shocking connection. The bank account that had supported the children was linked to a business trust that once belonged to the man's own company. His heart pounded as he read the reports. Could it be possible that the children were tied to him in ways deeper than fate? The lawyer explained carefully, "It seems one of your former partners managed these accounts in secret. Perhaps they knew of the children. Perhaps they were trying to hide them." The man's mind swirled with questions. Could it be that Emily and Lily were not strangers at all, but somehow connected to his own past? He could not share this yet with Emily. She had suffered enough. He continued to act as her shield, keeping her safe while the investigation pressed forward. But the woman grew more desperate. The guards reported that she had been seen near the gates, screaming threats into the night. One evening she threw stones at the windows. Breaking the peace, Emily screamed and clung to him, sobbing, "She will take us back." He held her tightly, his voice fierce. "She will never take you back, not while I live." The police became involved after that night, placing warnings against the woman. Yet the man knew her rage was like fire, it would not burn out easily. In the quiet hours he sat by the fire, Lily asleep in his arms, Emily curled beside him. He thought of the emptiness that had once consumed him, and the new purpose that now filled his days. He realized something greater than any fortune. He loved them, not in pity, not in duty, but with the unshakable love of a father who would lay down everything to protect his children. And in that realization, his resolve grew stronger. Would uncover the truth of their origins. He would fight every battle in court and beyond. He would guard their laughter and wipe away their fears. He had once been a lonely millionaire. Now he was something far more powerful. He was their protector, their family, their home. As the snowstorm raged outside the mansion, he whispered to the children asleep in his arms, "Tomorrow may bring battles, tomorrow may bring pain, but tonight you are safe and loved, and nothing will ever tear us apart." The storm that had surrounded the mansion for weeks was finally reaching its end, but the man knew that before peace could come, the darkest truths had to be uncovered. The investigation pressed deeper, and one evening the lawyer arrived carrying a folder so heavy with documents that his hands trembled. "Sir," he said quietly, "we have discovered everything, and it changes everything you thought you knew." The man opened the folder, his eyes scanning the papers. Each word struck him like thunder. The truth was undeniable. Emily and Lily were not strangers to him at all. They were blood of his blood. Their mother had once been the only woman he had ever loved, many years ago. She had disappeared from his life without explanation, leaving behind only silence. Now he learned that she had carried his children but had vanished into hardship and despair. Eventually, she had been lost to illness, leaving the girls in the hands of the cruel woman who claimed to be their guardian. The man sat frozen. As the firelight flickered across the pages, his heart ached with both joy and sorrow. Joy because fate had returned his daughters to him. Sorrow because he had not been there to protect them from years of suffering. His hands shook as he whispered, "They are mine. They were mine all along." Emily entered the study quietly, holding Lily in her arms. She saw the tears in his eyes and her face filled with fear. "What is wrong?" she asked gently. The man rose slowly, kneeling before her. His voice trembled. "Emily, I have something to tell you. You asked once if I would send you away. The answer is no. I never will, because you are my daughter, and Lily is my daughter too. You are my family, not by chance, but by blood." Emily stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She shook her head as if the words were too heavy to understand. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He took her hand, pressing it against his chest. "Long ago, I loved your mother. She was kind, gentle, but life was cruel, and she disappeared from me. I never knew she had you and Lily until fate placed you in my arms that night in the snow. You are not only the children I promised to protect, you are the children I should have been protecting all along." Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. Her voice cracked. "Is it true? Are you really my father?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he would never let go. "It is true, I swear it on every breath in my body. You are my daughter, my beloved child, and Lily is my daughter too." Emily clung to him, sobbing into his chest. For the first time, her tears were not of fear, but of release and belonging. From that moment, the bond between them was sealed not only by love, but by truth. The next court hearing arrived, and the man stood tall, declaring before the judge, "These are my children by blood and by heart. I claim them not as a guardian, not as a stranger, but as their father." The evidence spoke louder than any argument. The judge ruled firmly, granting him full custody and stripping the woman of any right to approach them. The courtroom echoed with the sound of finality. The chains of fear were broken. The woman screamed in fury, but her words no longer mattered. Guards led her away, and she vanished from their lives forever. Emily held his hand tightly, whispering softly, "You kept your promise again." And Lily giggled in her sister's arms as if she understood the victory too. Life in the mansion transformed, completely gone were the echoes of loneliness, replaced now with the laughter of children. The grand halls no longer felt like prisons of wealth, but like a home filled with warmth. Emily began to thrive, her smiles brighter each day. She studied with tutors, played in the gardens, and sang songs by the piano. Lily grew stronger each month, her baby laughter ringing like bells through the rooms. The man watched them with a heart full of pride and gratitude. At night he would sit by the fire, Emily curled against him with a book, Lily resting peacefully nearby. Would tell them stories not of wealth or business, but of courage, hope, and love. Emily would whisper sleepily, "Promise me again that you will never let us go," and he would answer, "Always, my daughter, always." Years later, the world still called him a millionaire, still spoke of his empire, but he no longer cared for those titles. For in his heart he held a title greater than any other. He was a father. He had walked into a park as a lonely man with nothing, and walked out carrying everything that mattered. Emily and Lily had healed his broken heart, and he had given them safety, love, and a home. And whenever he looked at them, he remembered the night Emily had sobbed, begging, "Don't hurt us," and he smiled, knowing that promise had been fulfilled. For eternity, they would never be hurt again. They would never be alone again. They were his children, his treasure, his reason to live.